My friends, this is Pernilla Lillerose from my business called Divine Feminine Flow. I know I always forget to introduce myself, and once in a while I remember, so today's that day. I have been going through a real deepening process for a while, and a lot of what I share here comes from that inner felt sense experience where things just seem to open up and clarify themselves. And feel like I've been going through another layer that I'm kind of still trying to put words to. So I'm gonna make an attempt today because I think it is just so brilliant, such clarity of seeing things as I deepen, that I think it might be worth sharing with you. And then you can see if it resonates. And if you have questions, of course, or any other experience you want to share, feel free to reach out. So I think I want to start like where I've talked about that when we are born into the third dimension, into the dimension we are here, which I call the matrix. When we're born into this, we're not born into sin, trust me, but we are born into the matrix. And the way I have seen that is that we are basically born into the core belief that I'm not good enough. In all the years that I've been doing this deeper work with myself, with my clients, with students, I don't know if I have met anybody yet, also in my life with friends, that is the core. I'm just not good enough, or there's something wrong with me, or something really limiting and victim-y. It's like we are born in here and then we become a victim as an experience, because that is the first energy. And again, I don't know that this is true on a scientific basis, but as a concept and a suggestion that might be helpful for all of us to basically come out of that. So that's really why I'm sharing it. I don't know if it's true, but it's helping me to see more clearly what's going on and how in that I can actually start unhooking from it. So let's say that, we're basically born into the matrix, and the first suggestion we're born into when we become more conscious. And of course, our parents and their parents and the peer, everybody is born into that. So the whole energy we're born into is that I'm not good enough. And it's not necessarily spoken to us. It's an energetic suggestion that it seems like it's just everywhere. For some reason, I have not yet met anybody who is in touch with their inner experience who cannot relate to that. So here we are, right? We live as if we are a victim because we are simply not good enough. And when we don't feel good enough, we try and oppose that, or we try to overcome that by being good enough. So we try to do things out in the world to prove to ourselves that we are good enough. Both of them are lies, and they will cancel each other out. Where to be good enough or not good enough, it does not exist in reality. It is part of the dualistic suggested lies that we just live as if they're true. So here we live as victims, and everything we do and feel and say and try is kind of going through that filter. And if there's some of you who don't have that experience, that is fine and that's great. You may already have moved out of it, or you may have been very blessed that you were born into something where that did not penetrate you. But the rest of us, that's a very common thing. So here we are as the victims, living our victim life, trying to overcome the victimness. And we're not yet in touch with who we really are. as an I am presence. The only thing that is true and real is I am. And it's not a sentence or words in your mind. It is a real felt sense experience. So here we are, basically as victims, and we are totally out of touch with what is really true, which is I am. I am is the only reality there is. And I think I've shared one or two meditations where I help you go really into that experience of I am. I will post a link in the description. So if all there is I am, and when you are there, it's very obvious. So what has happened is it's almost like a part of I am kind of collapsed down because this belief that I'm not good enough, that does not exist here, like I said. It also doesn't exist, I am good enough. It's just pure being in presence with, the everything amazing and expansive. So that whole duality doesn't exist here. But then there's this part that kind of collapses here to the side, let's say, and this is our life as a separate sense of self, separate from the divine, separate from I am. It's not real, but it is a separate sense. So it feels very real, and that's why we create this separate life, trying to be good enough or to be successful. So the work is to come back realizing we are I am. And that's the challenge for most of us, because when we live in this separate sense of self, it's like we don't have what it takes to rise up. It's like, how do we rise up out of the ashes and become fully who we are, become the phoenix rising, which is already here? That's the most important part. It's already here. It's just that we have turned our attention away from what is true. So we need something to get from here to here. And this victim part does not have what that takes, as long as it's really unconscious. And it is for most. Most people live an unconscious life trying to, be good enough, be successful. But at some point, you will bump into something where you realize, like, there's something wrong. Why is it so hard? Why am I never feeling really amazing? And then there's something that start questioning, that question is like, is this all there is? That is when we start tuning more into the power of I am. We're still feeling separate from I am, but now there is a part of us arising that wants to do something about it. And that's where we start doing all the things that we've all done. We may start therapy, we may start meditating, we may go to teachers, we may change our diets, we may try plant medicine, we may try meditation retreats, breathing exercises. I mean, it's endless, the things that are being offered, right? So that's when we start rising up a little bit out of the ashes, because we have engaged another part of us, our true I am. But the thing is, we still feel separate from I am. It's like here was this separate sense of self that's a victim, and now so that was still part of I am, right? It's not separate from I am. It's just kind of it took a side road pretending it wasn't that. And now there's another part that starts, and that feels more like, I'm not a victim. I can do something about this. And that's the one that gets this one here, this little one here, to do all the things I just mentioned. And then this one starts rising, it starts getting stronger. They're still separate. There's separate senses of self trying to get stronger and stand up and get out of the ashes. And there is no way around this. I want to just say this. There is no way around it because we all need to bring all these victim parts back home. And then we have a part that's more stronger, more sovereign, that can say, hey, let's do this. And we need this part. If we don't have this part that says, I'm going to do something about it, we will stay in that state. And you may know many people who do. So this is your friend for a long time, maybe forever. But at a certain point, we also need to realize that they're still both separate from I am. In the meantime, the one that feels empowered, that's the one that brings both the victim and itself to the place where we will move from my will, right? The second part here that's getting strong, it's like my will. I'm going to do it with my will. And it's very important because if this one that feels like it has no will, if it doesn't suddenly feel a boost of will, of strength, then it will stay there. So it's like my will. No, it's my will. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm sick and tired of being a victim. I'm going to do something about it, right? Very, very important phase. And this one here is also one that eventually, when this one here, the one that has risen up, realizes that, this is not it either. There's still something missing. And that is, of course, because it can feel the I am is becoming more available, maybe in certain ways with meditation, with all the things I mentioned. And you start sensing into there's something else here. And that's when I feel like my will, as this separate one who's helping the victim, now there's a pull for my will to align with thy will. So we're not trying to change these things. Eventually, when this one is strong enough, and we do a lot to change it and get it out of it, but we have to remember both these aspects of us that think they're separate from the divine, they're not. And that's helped me a lot to bring certain things out more, to see that this is not a problem. The one that's collapsed, it's not a problem, but I can't see that when I'm totally collapsed in it. So the more this more powerful part helps raise this up, then with the connection to our true divinity, then I can start seeing like, but this is not a problem. This is still part of I am, but I had moved away from it because the matrix had all these suggestions that are lies, but I believed them. Now this one has helped me see more of that. And this one is beginning to see it at a deeper level also. But for me to know that neither of these two separate selves, separate sense of selves, they are not separate. And it's so important to really get that. They are not separate. So we don't need to do anything with them or try and get rid of them or trying to educate them. At a certain point, it's just like this one can help both these elements of separation, sense of separation, like, okay, we are going to just sit here at the portal of divinity. And I have a poem on there. I'll put it in the link. I think it's called I'm Sitting at the Portal of My Own Divinity. That is where this still separate sense of self, but now it's so maybe has matured a lot that it's willing to let all of it go. And that's when you can start dropping into the I am presence that I am. What my experience has been with that is like when I finally go there, it's a sense of surrender, of course. Then I realize that I am that portal. I am not Pernilla, but I am. That is the true identity of all of us. And when I go there, it's like these other parts, they're naturally there. I'm not pushing them out or trying to fix them anymore. It's like they're just being invited from being collapsed. Now eventually they can stand up straight, and then there is more power to willingly surrender. So we need a lot of this work that we have done to be able to finally surrender. And I've talked a lot about the work we do, right? That is, there are so many videos on that. And, and then there's this place where there's still something pulling back, and, and also a sense of I am. And the parts that are still, from my own experience, that are still pulling me back is still a sense that I'm a victim, and I've had to deal with body issues for a while. And there I have felt like I have been a victim to my own body sensations and body whatever troubles. And as I'm seeing that, like, oh, so I have still lived in this sense of victimhood. And as I saw that layer, I can now, it feels like it's a different spin on it now. It's like, oh, that part that I've been trying to fix and do all kind of things with, she's not separate either. She is just still feeling like she's not integrated, that she's still collapsed here as a victim and she can't do anything about it. And just seeing that, I find it so powerful, and I hope it is for you too. Then it's more like, oh, and I have talked about this before. It's like, oh, yes. Oh, you don't need fixing. It's just like you kind of fell out of the I am presence experience, but you have never been separated from it. So that's when we can start bringing it all back home just by being here more and more. And it's almost like I still feel a sense of like, yes, you come too. You don't need to do anything. There's nothing to fix anymore. There's nothing to change. So it feels like there's an open invitation for that part to come in here too and be integrated. And then it's just a deepening sense of surrender. And that's where a lot of these insights come. And that makes it feel so real. It's very fresh, it's alive, and I go in and then it's all there. And sometimes I write it down because it's, even when it's still new, I like to, you know, give myself more time with it. So then I might just read a sentence or a couple of sentences, and then I feel it right away, and then it allows me to just deepen in it again. And of course, the deepening is happening in and as I am. But seeing these parts that still thought they were separate, they're melting, just melting back in here. It's a big mouthful, and I hope it's making sense at this point as I'm maybe rambling a little bit, trying to put words to these experiences. But I think a really important part of this is to realize that these parts that feel collapsed in our life, and also the parts that feel like, oh, I can, we will be successful, we can do this. It's that part that feels, wants to be empowered, whether it's to help this one stand up and come home, or if it's to go out in the world and create something more empowering. It's still a sense of us that is also separate, but is helpful, can be very helpful. It probably can do other things too, but it's just another separate sense of who we already are. So as we bring them home, one at a time, or maybe two or four at a time, who knows? Every process is different. Then there's more sense of wholeness. Then it's easier to just to stay present in yourself, in I am. Uh, there's no reason to bypass. The bypass would be if this part that still feels like a victim, if that is not integrated back into I am, then we have bypassed something. And I did a video on the bypass. You can't get into heaven, I think, when your core wound is not healed or something. So that's kind of this thing, we need to bring everything in. There's no reason to leave anything out. And there's no point to doing it because all it does, it kind of keeps you out of I am, because your attention is still there, even though you might pretend it's not there. It's still there. So that's why it's because it's a part of who you already are. And all our parts want to come home. So we need to invite them all home lovingly, uh, peacefully, gently, and little by little, we become more conscious of who we already are. Wow. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear how all this lands for you. And of course, I would be grateful if you like and subscribe, share with others, comment to keep the conversation alive. And if you do need help with that, I offer a lot of ways. You can work with me privately. You can join my upcoming Tuesday morning online gathering about how to connect with, your own true energy. And I will also be offering a webinar I think it's mid-January, where we will also talk about this, because this is really what it's all about for me, is to fully embody and live the I am, the truth of my being, all in one, without trying to push anything aside. Thank you so much for listening, and I really look forward to hearing from you.